Long ago, in a world where the land and the sea were bound by an eternal dance of ebbing tides and crashing waves, there was a kingdom beneath the ocean, shimmering with colors and mysteries. The sea was not merely water, but a realm of wonders. It was a place where the very air seemed to hum with the voices of ancient songs. The songs of the ocean spirit. Beneath the waves, coral palaces grew like trees, their surfaces glistening with pearls. And schools of fish darted through the water like shimmering, multicolored ribbons. In this world lived a young mermaid named Nereida. Her tail was a magnificent shade of emerald green, speckled with glimmering silver scales that caught the light of the sun when it broke through the waves. She had flowing locks of golden hair that billowed around her like a halo, and eyes the color of the clearest azure sky. She was not just beautiful, but curious, a trait that made her different from the other merfolk. While her sisters and brothers were content with their daily duties, gathering pearls, singing to the whales, or listening to the ancient stories of the sea, Nereida often found herself drawn to the surface, where the land met the water. Her grandmother, the queen of the sea, had warned her against venturing too close to the land, for it was there where dangerous creatures lived, humans who could not be trusted. The land was a place of cruelty, of greed, and of sorrow. The merfolk lived in harmony with the sea, and the queen believed it was safer for them to remain apart from the human world. Yet, every time Nereida looked up at the sky, she felt an overwhelming longing to discover the world above, to see the creatures that walked on two legs, to know what it felt like to breathe air instead of water. One day, as she swam alone, the sun breaking through the ocean's surface created a golden path of light that seemed to reach out to her. For the first time, Nereida could no longer resist. She surfaced, her golden hair glistening in the sunlight, and saw a ship sailing across the water. On the deck stood a young man, a human prince, with eyes like the sea and hair as dark as a midnight sky. Nereida was captivated by the sight of the prince. His laughter echoed across the water like a melody, and his face, though foreign to her, held an expression of wonder as he gazed at the vast ocean. As the ship sailed closer, she felt her heart beat faster. She swam closer to the surface, hiding just beneath the waterline, watching him with awe. The prince, oblivious to her presence, leaned over the edge of the ship, staring down into the water. He had a deep love for the sea, though he had never known its true secrets. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. The ship was caught in a fierce storm that seemed to come from nowhere. The waves rose high, and thunder cracked the sky, sending the ship rocking violently. The crew scrambled in panic, but the young prince was thrown overboard. Nereida, her heart racing, watched as the prince struggled in the waves, his cries drowned by the storm. Without thinking, she dove into the water, her powerful tail propelling her through the deep, dark waves. She reached the prince just as he sank beneath the water's surface, his body limp and cold. With all her strength, she pulled him into her arms and swam toward the shore, where the storm's fury could no longer reach. She brought him to a small cove, a hidden beach she had visited before, and there she placed him on the sand, her heart pounding in her chest. The prince gasped for air as his eyes fluttered open. But when he saw the figure kneeling beside him, the golden-haired, mysterious mermaid, he was both terrified and entranced. Before he could say a word, Nereida vanished into the water, her shimmering tail disappearing beneath the waves, leaving only the echo of the storm in her wake. Nereida's heart ached as she swam back to her coral home. She could not stop thinking of the prince, of his eyes, of the way he had looked at her with such wonder. He was from the land, a creature so different from herself. But there was something deep within her that told her their fates were intertwined. She needed to see him again. Nights passed, and each day Nereida swam closer to the shore, searching for any sign of the prince. She heard from the birds of the air that he had survived the storm, but he had no memory of the mermaid who had saved him. He had returned to his kingdom, and his heart was heavy with a longing for something he could not understand. It was then that Nereida made the fateful decision to seek out the Sea Witch, an ancient and mysterious being who lived in the depths of the darkest part of the ocean. The Sea Witch was feared by all, her heart as cold and sharp as the jagged rocks she called home. Yet she had the power to grant wishes, though at a steep price. Nereida swam through the dark waters, her tail slicing through the currents. After what felt like an eternity, she reached the Sea Witch's domain. The witch's lair was surrounded by black coral, and the water around it was thick with magic. The Sea Witch herself, a creature of shadow and light, rose from the depths as Nereida approached. "What is it that you seek, young mermaid?" the Sea Witch asked, her voice both silky and sinister. "I wish to walk on land," Nereida replied, her voice trembling with both hope and fear. "I wish to be human, so that I may be with the prince." The Sea Witch smiled, a cruel, twisted smile that made the water around Nereida shiver. "To walk on land, you must give up something in return. You will lose your voice, your beautiful singing voice. And should you fail to win the love of the prince, you will never return to the sea. Your soul will be bound to the land, and you will spend eternity as a shadow of your former self." Nereida hesitated, but her longing for the prince was too great. She nodded. "I accept." The Sea Witch reached out with her long, bony fingers and touched Nereida's forehead. The mermaid's golden hair shimmered, and her tail began to shrink and transform into two legs. Nereida gasped as the painful transformation took place, her scales turning to skin. Her once shimmering tail was now to delicate human legs. But there was a terrible price. Her voice, the thing that had once filled the ocean with songs, was now silent. She could no longer sing, and her beautiful voice was gone forever. As the transformation was complete, the Sea Witch handed Nereida a small vial of water from the ocean. "Should you win the prince's heart, you will be granted your voice back, and you may return to the sea. But should you fail, you will be bound to the land forever." With a heavy heart and trembling legs, Nereida swam to the shore. She felt the weight of her decision pressing upon her, but she could not turn back. The prince awaited her, or so she believed. She reached the shore and collapsed onto the sand, exhausted but determined. The next morning, Nereida woke on the shore, her legs aching from the transformation. The air was dry, and her golden hair clung to her damp skin. She slowly stood up and steady on her new legs. The world above the ocean was vast and strange, but she moved forward, guided by the memory of the prince's face. She wandered through the village near the beach, avoiding the gazes of the humans who stared at her with curiosity. Her beauty was undeniable, but there was something otherworldly about her, the way she moved, the way she seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. The villagers whispered about her, calling her the Sea Maiden. But Nereida had only one goal in mind, to find the prince. Finally, after several days of searching, Nereida found the prince. He was walking in the palace gardens, and when he saw her, his eyes widened in recognition. He remembered the woman who had saved him from the storm, though he could not place her face. She stood before him, but she could not speak. No words came from her lips, only a silent plea in her eyes. The prince, though confused, was drawn to her. He had heard the story of the mysterious Sea Maiden who had saved him, and he felt a strange connection to her. Yet, as the days passed, his heart remained torn. He had promised to marry another woman, a princess from a neighboring kingdom, and duty weighed heavily on him. Nereida's heart ached as she watched the prince grow closer to the princess, but she could not reveal her true feelings. She could not speak, and so she could not tell him the truth that she was the one who had saved him, that her heart belonged to him. Instead, she danced with him, smiled at him, and waited. But the prince's heart was not hers to claim, for he had fallen in love with the princess. As their wedding day drew closer, Nereida felt the crushing weight of her sacrifice. The water in the vial the Sea Witch had given her seemed to grow colder with each passing day. On the eve of the wedding, as the prince and his bride-to-be prepared to marry, Nereida stood on the shore, gazing out at the ocean. The waves crashed against the rocks, as if calling to her. She could feel the pull of the sea, but she knew that her heart would never again belong to the water. With a heavy heart, she returned to the sea witch's lair, ready to accept her fate. The sea witch, seeing the mermaid's sorrow, smiled grimly. "You have failed, young one. You will never return to the sea, and your soul will be lost to the land forever." But Nereida, though heartbroken, had made peace with her choice. She would never forget the prince, but she would find a way to live, to be free from the longing that had consumed her. As the sea witch's magic claimed her, Nereida's form turned to foam, the final echo of a love that was never meant to be. And so, the legend of the mermaid passed into the sea's eternal song, a tale of longing, sacrifice, and the cost of pursuing a love that was never truly hers.